let's go ahead and define an Android virtual device now. In fact, we'll go ahead and define it, and then we even test running a little bit of code on it. So I'm here inside of Eclipse. Notice right here I've got my button for my Android Virtual Device Manager. If I hover over that, it'll say Android Virtual Device Manager. We'll go ahead and launch that. All right, so we have it here. Now, as I said, I happen to have one already defined. The first time you run this, this will be completely empty. So we're going to go to our device definitions. And what I'm going to do here is let's just notice that we've got several predefined ones here. So that means that these layouts, these configurations, match these real devices. You see Google's provided several of them, as well as the generic ones we talked about. If you want to just try different kind of configurations, particularly if you have to support older devices, it's kind of nice to have access to these to get a sense of how your code works on really old devices. What I'm going to do for here, though, I'm just going to go ahead and run it on a Galaxy Nexus. So I've got that there. I'm going to choose, right, Create AVD. Here's my screen. Right, I'm going to go ahead and keep that name there. As I mentioned, I'll go ahead and make this 512. I'll make that 32 meg. I'm going to go ahead now and just say OK to go ahead and create it. So now you notice that I've got that here, and if I just kind of expand this so we can see it, I've got this Galaxy Nexus by Google 2, and my Galaxy Nexus here I just created. So I've got my images in place. So now with that there, it's all defined. When I'm ready, I can go ahead and just click Start, and that'll go ahead and start it up. Now, one thing to be aware of is that when you do this, the very first time you run it, depending on your machine, I mean, it can be a long time. I mean, it might be 5 or 10 minutes for that very first image to start up. I mean, that's extreme, but that can happen. After you've started it the first time, it'll start a lot more quickly. Right now, for our purposes here, I'm going to go ahead and start this one that I've used before. The configurations are exactly the same, just so I can kind of get it to start up more quickly. But the main thing is we highlight the one we want. We say Start. It'll just kind of say, well, do you want to scale the size? I'm going to go ahead and scale it so it fits on my screen a little bit better. If you, one of the issues is when we record these videos, we have to use a really low resolution of 1024 by 768, so we have to do the scaling. If you're working with a modern monitor at home, you probably won't have to do that. You can go ahead and let it be the default values there. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that, and as that guy comes up, and once it's up, we'll step back in and see what we can do with it. So here we are. The emulator is going ahead and finished starting up. And you can see the layout here that you've got the screen area there. And you've got some of the things you might expect to find on a device. Things like a power button, some volume controls, things like our home buttons, right? A D-pad if we want to use that. But the key thing here is we're going to go ahead and just kind of kick it and unlock it just like you would a device, right? Just kind of grab that lock, pull it over. And there we are. We are inside of our emulator, right? So that's working for us. So that's pretty good, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back here, close my AVD, right? Close the manager. I'm going to go ahead and create a simple project, just a default project here, and let's see if we can run it on the emulator. So I'm inside of Eclipse. I'm going to go to File, New, say a new Android application project. Here we go, the new Android application. I'm just going to call it, my first Android app. And we're just going to take defaults on everything here because all we want to do is just actually see the code run on the emulator. So I'm just going to say next for that. Again, for the next screen, I'm going to leave all these as defaults. Again, we'll talk about these in great detail as we go forward. We just want to see our code run on the emulator, so I'm going to click next again. Right, click next again. Just take blank activity, that's fine. Right, and again, we're just taking all the defaults, so I'm going to go ahead and say finish now. And so here we are. Our project is entirely generated, ready to go. Now, the only thing I'm going to do is that I'm just going to go here to this little picture of a bug. I'm going to tell it just to go ahead and run and see if my code runs on the emulator. So I'm going to click on that to get it started. I'm just going to go ahead and drag the emulator into view here so it shows up on the screen. And let's see what happens. Now, you see, one of the things that happens here is that basically saying that, do you want it to actually auto monitor logcat? That's the output information that comes from our devices. We're just going to go ahead and leave that at its default value. So I'm just going to go ahead and say OK. And now you see, here is our application, our Hello World application. So we have successfully created a virtual device image and created a project and ran code on it. Again, we're going to go through in great detail what all those things we did mean, but that's a pretty big success. We've now created a project and are running it right on our desktop within an emulated Android environment.